Mohammed Ridwan is co-founder and CEO of Pluto. I haven't checked you on AI because we met online and we discussed a few times what we're going to talk. But I believe AI knows good things about you. So we will discuss deepfake and related technologies. We faced it everywhere. We faced it in Azerbaijan for maybe last 3-4 years. We see advertisement or deepfakes related to politics, to economical things. Even our sponsor had deepfaked Pasha Holding. People were invited to invest in Pasha, which Pasha had no connection with. So we know, and now recently we see deepfake or AI-generated content, video content of great quality. And what is important for Azerbaijan, with the support of Azerbaijani language, the dialects becomes better and better. Now, with that in place, and the topic is the battle for truth, what do you think we should, where we are in the battle for truth?
Well, thank you very much, Emin, and Anatoly and the team at StrategEast. I first wanted to thank everyone for inviting me here today. This is my first time in Baku. It's been fantastic to be here. Look, just a little bit about myself. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Pluto. We're a global fintech operating across UAE, USA, Saudi Arabia, Canada, and a few other regions. But today's conversation is not about Pluto. It's about deepfakes. And one of the things that I wanted to bring up is that 6 years ago, I had joined a very small startup in Toronto called Dessa. And Dessa was a AI and machine learning infrastructure company and one of the leaders in the space in Canada. And back then, what we did was we started working on deepfakes for the first time. And we took content from a famous podcaster, many of you guys may know if you're from America, of Joe Rogan, and replicated his voice to the point where every single part of it, for example, if I'm talking slowly now, if I'm taking a breathe in, breathe out as I'm speaking, or if I'm speaking louder, all parts of it were replicated one-to-one to the point where 9 out of 10 people listening to the voice were not able to tell which one was the fake Joe Rogan and which one was the real Joe Rogan. Now, that took us almost 6 months of engineering work, of PhD researchers to be able to release. But today, as me and you are sitting here, we can walk outside, sit at the Fairmont lobby, grab a coffee, and just hang out. And I have my iPad with me. And even with the few words that I have said so far, you can replicate my voice end to end immediately with $10 a month, right? From an online app store product, right? So the reason I bring this up today is because, we have interacted with government workers, we've interacted with tourism industry operators and many others. And there's several implications of that, of deepfakes across government, securities, banking, and others. And I'm happy to dig into that to be able to tell you some of the latest developments that we've been seeing. One of the key things that I have seen in the latest battle for reality that we're talking about today is that when we think about deepfakes, we tend to think about audio, video, and what you see when you're scrolling on your Instagram or your Snapchat, etc., the content that you see there, right? But deepfakes right now are actually being worked on in a more broader case. So historically, companies had to battle with fake expense receipts, fake invoices for money laundering purposes or other things. And this was a very common use case that people used to use Photoshop or others to be able to do that. But that now has become way more sophisticated with the latest technologies like Google's VO3, where you can now make a receipt or invoice, showcase it from different angles, right? So you can show a receipt that is crumbled. You can show an invoice that is handwritten, right? And it looks as if a camera took that picture. So that manipulation has become so difficult to tell, and we are seeing cases of that happen within companies where employees and others are submitting fake documents architected from various angles using deepfake tool to be able to get money out of the company and other places. The other big thing that I'm seeing these days is in insurance fraud. So this is something lesser known, but what we are seeing in companies is that in various insurance companies have been reporting is that there are people who are now bringing fake CT scans, fake X-rays that look ultra realistic, right, with their characteristics to be able to add it for insurance scams. That is a very, very common thing that is happening. So altogether, over the last few years, from 2023, when some of the early deepfakes were coming up, to right now, the stats are pretty significant. In 2023, we had about 500,000 approximated deepfake content in over the internet. In 2025, it is reported to be about 8.5 million right now of deepfake content across the world in the internet. So you can see the rise is really exponential, and the impact that we have for governments and others is something really we need to be concerned about.
That's pretty scary, I would say. What deepfakes can do now, what they couldn't do when they started doing it. So right. Because now even I'm questioning almost any video I'm seeing. Even funny videos are not funny anymore, because you don't know if that's a real cat does the thing or that was AI. So it's affects a lot of things. It's not only the financial or organizational or I don't know political things, but it's also affects our how we feel about ourselves, how we perceive the things that we see. So what is new in deepfakes that you monitor?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, you're completely correct in not trusting anything that you see online, right? I think that's generally a good strategy to have right now. But I'll talk about some of the latest developments that we have seen. The first big technological change that has happened is the fact that back when we first started, it would take, say, 10,000 images and several hours of video to be able to replicate a voice or others. But Microsoft's latest model takes 3 seconds of your audio to be able to turn it into a replicable voice, right? That's number one. Second part, when it comes to video, Google's VO3 allows you to be able to take a single image and turn that into a portrait that can be animated, right? Those are examples that you see online that are very common, and that's one of the biggest changes that have happened. But the thing that is the most scariest to me right now, and what we are most concerned about, is tools like expression camera. Expression camera is something that many folks here may not have heard about, but if you go online, you can actually purchase it for about $100. It's a little camera that you put on top of your webcam, and what it allows you to do is in real time, it allows you to change your face, change your clothing. So if you're wearing shorts on Zoom, you can change it to look like you're a presidential candidate wearing a suit, right? It allows you to give the image of somebody else and replicate that image, all live streamed. So that means that I could be on Zoom right now, I could be on Google Meet, and I could be pretending to be somebody else. If you were in the last conversation with Waleed, Kate, and everybody else, Waleed actually mentioned a really interesting case here where a managing director in Hong Kong was scammed out of 25 million USD. And how did that happen? The managing director went on a Zoom call with the CFO and a couple of other executives, but all of those executives were fake. They were all using face swaps and others in real time to be able to do that. The second big thing that we are seeing with this rapid rise is that when it comes to banking ecosystem, so at least in Azerbaijan, you have the SIMA, I think it's called. You have the SIMA identity verification. In the UAE, you have UAE Pass, right? But in many other countries, banks, when you're taking loans, they still require you to just come on a Google Meet or a Zoom call to be able to get that approval going on. There's been a recent case right now where someone took a popular celebrity's pictures from Instagram, found out which bank they operate with, called the bank to be able to request for a $250,000 loan, right? They went on the call, pretended to be that person, and then eventually got that loan. So in terms of technology, just to summarize what you're saying on the big changes, the first part is that this is now easier than ever. It's now faster than ever. The latency is really, really low, right? it's now much harder to detect these things because not just the fact that the amount of content has increased so much, but also the fact that deepfake content is also being promoted in various kind of social medias. So you can see OpenAI now has the Sora social media where all of the content on Sora are deepfakes, right? So it's being much harder to be able to tell what is real or not because of all these rapid changes that are happening.
The fear and scare doesn't go down while we speak. But what can we do about it? Or we, meaning everyone, governments, society, technical companies, is there any approach to that? I heard about the attempt by the big guys like Microsoft, Facebook, Meta, and others to work out the way to communicate between each other about the content generated by AI. So is there anything that we could and should do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think before we go into the political or the government approaches with it, I wanted to give one or two more examples of very serious use cases of deepfakes that we have seen happen recently. You may have heard that the ex-prime minister of Pakistan is in jail. Imran Khan, who is in jail. The last election that happened was actually won by him from jail, and the way this was done is that his team replicated his voice and his video to be able to create a grand speech that had over 5 million views on YouTube and others that was sent as part of his election campaign. So pretty crazy to see that, not just the fact that we're using deepfakes for entertainment, but it's the fact that real government leaders are using that as political information. In the last US election as well, there were many content that was posted that were clearly fakes, right? And because of that, the US enacted an act that says that any political content that uses any kind of deepfakes associated with it must specify that this is a fake video, right? So that being said, this is just few very small examples of how serious things can be. We're also seeing attacks happen in very subtle ways. So without naming names of different countries and governments, there are one government who is a directly opposing party to the tourism of another government, and they compete with each other for tourisms, right? And there's always like this tension between them to be able to fight for tourism. What we saw is that there has been recent content being posted on Facebook and others where people are scrolling, and it's deepfake content to showcase something negative about that other country, but that is not true. For example, they're showcasing that somebody's getting shark attacks on the beach, that some of their beaches are polluted, right? Or showcasing the fact that if you are in the street vendor, somebody is stealing your things as you are a tourist over there. So there's actually things happening where there's political misinformation that is being spread by other parties to be able to do that. So when we think about protecting from deepfakes, to be honest, I'm less hopeful about direct protection. Okay, we do have deepfake detection technology that has been worked on in various ways, but deepfake detection technology has some severe key flaws. You see, the thing is, when you are working on deepfakes, your theoretical max of deepfakes is getting as close to reality as possible. When you're working on deepfake detection, what is your theoretical max? There's no theoretical max for deepfake detection because that's reality, right? Deepfakes, you can go as far as being as close to reality as possible, but deepfake detection, not as much, because you will then say that everything is fake around you, right? There are deepfake technologies that are being developed to be able to detect it. It's not as reliable. It's kind of like antivirus software, right? Yeah, always behind, right? It's always going to be behind. It's never going to catch up with it. But what we are seeing is really interesting ways governments and policymakers use and enact acts to be able to do that. So, for example, The U.S. is a really good example of this. The U.S. has passed a act that forces a federal crime. It becomes a federal crime if you create like mature content using somebody else's deepfake, and you can sue them for that. So that's a really big development that has happened recently. We're also seeing countries like Estonia who are combining deepfake technology with blockchain for any kind of official government communication. So if you have a very serious government communication that needs to happen, the recording usually goes through some cryptographic inputs to be able to be verified that this is actually the real person speaking on the other side. So I think I'm just going to summarize there. When we think about like protecting ourselves from deepfakes, there's usually like 3 different ways that I like to think about it. First is in the government policies, right? The second is on the deepfake detection technology. And the third is the collaboration with the platforms, right? So we're seeing if you create content using Sora or VO3 or any of these tools, there's watermarks that are being placed in various places. Now, of course, you can always get rid of the watermarks. You can use open source technology, right? But by being able to collaborate with them and labeling fake videos as fake videos by these platforms, which are enabling mass distribution, it allows us to have one more step towards protection. But at the same time, like I'm a bit more pessimist about the future when it comes to deepfakes and some of the content that we see. And I think it's going to require real government and policy intervention before we can have some serious progress there.
Thanks for that notes. And I can give you an example of, it's not about deepfakes, but it's about collaboration with big platforms. I'm working with TikTok here in Azerbaijan, and I know the process how government officials or government entities report certain videos to TikTok because they are violating their conduct of rule of conduct or local legislation. And it requires local authority some efforts to prove, I'm not talking about deepfakes, it's about regular videos, right. To prove to the platform that this video is violating something or it's not true, etc. So my point is that it requires an effort to prove to the platform, because platform has their own rules, so their openness, I don't know, they protect the right of users, etc. So this contradiction of the right of the users and the right of the, I don't know, regular people or officials or celebrities, that there is a contradiction which itself makes the things not easy.
Right.
When we add their deepfake or quality deepfake, I'm guessing now that how this platform will evaluate without technical means, just to check it and say immediately this is deepfake or not. So this battle is not, it does have technical facets, but also it has some regulatory side, policy side that should be agreed not only on the government level, but by the big platforms that are storing or sharing or making available these videos. So there should be an approach that is accepted by everyone, yeah, who have goodwill, and then only these joint efforts could do something.
100%. Like, what you said is actually really interesting, which is the fact that what you said was that your content guidelines needs to be solidified before the platforms can say whether this should be allowed or not, right? And what we are seeing right now, some new technologies have come up, LLM technologies, that essentially what they do is, so platforms like TikTok, Facebook, etc., they have thousands of people constantly doing content moderation. So they have their guidelines, they're sitting down, they're watching content on a random basis, saying, yes, this is allowed, no, this is not allowed, etc., right? What has happened recently is that we are seeing some new tools come up which take the context of the business, context of the country that you're in, context of the law of the country that you're in, take all of that and automatically detect that, okay, this content should be allowed in this country, but this should not be allowed in this area because of the content guideline. So this is actually a really interesting use case of LLMs that we're seeing, where instead of black and white, yes, no, you can now take the context of the world that you're living in to be able to approve or disapprove content.
It's also about cultural differences that we also face. Thank you very much. I don't know how do you feel now after this session. I don't feel much better than before. But thank you, Mohammed. Thank you for your time. Thank you for visiting Azerbaijan. We discussed that there are many things, many places that you should and will see probably. And thank you for this session. Thank you for your insights.
Thank you very much.